Global economy.
The global economy.
The global economy.
The global economy.
Global economy.
The global economy.
The global economy has entered a phase of unprecedented uncertainty.
People don't seem to realize that we really are in the midst of this massive transformation.
So what's driving this change? And how will major forces like trade shifts, changing demographics, and artificial intelligence shape our fast-moving world?
Yes, we see some geo-economic fragmentation, but we don't see yet any deglobalization.
We've asked some of the world's leading chief economists, working in both the private and public sectors, to look ahead and pick the trends they think will transform the economy as we know it.
It's not that AI is new or machine learning is new. In fact, we all know that it goes back to the 1950s. What's new is the consumer orientation of that AI.
These experts explain. The first trend that's on economists' minds is the changing nature of global trade. Trade is all about the exchange of goods and services. This process might seem as natural to our globalized world as travel or sending an instant message.
If I had to make all of my clothes, all of my food, all of my housing, all of my shelter, and so on by myself personally, clearly this would be a disaster. So what do? I specialize in something, you specialize in something, and we exchange. I think it stands to reason that this is the absolute fundamental pillar of our prosperity. Now, international trade is just an extension of this very basic idea across international borders.
But who trades with whom can be closely linked to geopolitics. Tariffs and protectionism are redrawing the map of globalization. They're causing what economists call fragmentation, where the world economy splits into competing groups instead of a single connected system. Chief economists agree that protectionism, a practice of restricting imports from other countries through tariffs, will cause a long-lasting change to global patterns over the next 3 years.
But what we do see is trade reorienting around geopolitical lines. This is most obvious in the relationship between China and the United States. Since the first wave of Trump tariffs from the previous administration, the trade share, so bilateral trade between China and the United States has grown much, much more slowly than trade between either of these countries and third countries.
When the WTO looked at the voting behavior of the UN General Assembly, it found that members were more likely to trade with countries they regarded as allies, a practice otherwise known as friendshoring. In the first quarter of 2025, the changing dynamics of trade relations between major powers like the US, China, the EU, Canada, and Mexico dominated the news. OSA says it remains to be seen whether trade tensions, particularly between the US and China, will lead to further fragmentation among other countries.
One figure that most people don't know is that bilateral trade between China and the United States actually only accounts for less than 3% of world trade. So it generates 80% of the news, but only 3% of world trade, if you will. So I think it's safe to predict that trade tensions between these two countries are going to persist. I think the key question is this going to spread to other countries, or is this going to be contained to that bilateral relationship?
A second trend economists highlight is demographic transformations. By 2050, the world's population is projected to reach 9.7 billion people. But there are major regional differences. The UN projects that the population of sub-Saharan Africa is likely to double, while the population of Europe is likely to shrink. At the same time, people aged 65 and above are the world's fastest growing demographic, which is already posing a challenge in caring for this group in regions like Eastern Asia and Europe.
In terms of wealthy countries, you see an aging demographic where more and more of their working population is heading into retirement. But if you look around the world, particularly in Africa and Asia, what you see is a worker population that is growing into itself. Younger workers are becoming more and more a part of the prime working age.
Around the world, the average population age is trending higher, with the number of people over 60 expected to double by 2050.
There's 3 levels of infrastructure where you really see this worker shortage and an aging demographic come into play. It's the financial infrastructure. For example, there's not enough accountants. It's the care economy infrastructure. So there's not enough nurses and healthcare workers or even babysitters for the population. And then there's the actual physical infrastructure. So here you think about specialized trades or construction.
According to recent research, 63% of businesses say their most significant barrier to growth is the inability to attract the right workers. Richardson says making these soon-to-be in-demand jobs more sustainable and attractive to prospective workers is key to keeping workforces resilient even as more people retire.
And this is where skills and upskilling is going to be so important. Not just creating jobs and skilling workers in these specific areas, but allowing workers the mobility to progress in these areas so they won't leave. They won't leave healthcare or accounting jobs and go to more profitable places because they see advancement and potential in these areas.
Artificial intelligence, experts argue, will play a key role in reshaping these jobs, and many others. That's the third trend economists are watching closely.
Generative AI is making us rethink the concept of productivity. Usually we think about productivity, about producing the same with less or more with the same. I think generative AI is making us think that productivity is more like producing better with less.
Take AI agents, for example. They can be autonomous bots or even entire systems that can learn from their environment and help us, say, tick off the objectives on our to-do list without constant reminders. They have the potential to drastically improve our productivity or absolve us from certain tasks altogether. But these technologies should not lead to a loss of jobs. Richardson says productivity is also about companies providing the right upskilling pathways so that employees can grow their careers.
It's becoming even more important to be in a world where companies are invested in their talent, in human capital, moving from just managing workers to developing workers.
So where does that leave us with AI? Will it make us more productive at work?
There's a famous economist from MIT, Robert Solow, won the Nobel Prize for Growth. He was talking about computers in the 1980s. He said, we can see computers everywhere except in the productivity data. So it took a while for those effects to show up. It may show up sooner for AI. The view seems to be that the impact of the technology may be a bit more rapid than we saw for computers. But I think directionally, we're all pretty confident we're going to see some sort of improvement coming out of AI.
Generative AI could contribute $4.4 trillion annually to the global economy, reshaping industries and international trade as it develops. In a 2025 survey of businesses, 86% of respondents said AI could transform their work more than any other technology trend such as robots, semiconductors, or quantum.
It's not just about the great tech. You need workers to be able to incorporate that tech and actually become more productive. And if there is a chasm between the tech and the people, then you won't get the productivity enhancements that lead to a thriving labor force.
No expert can know for certain how these trends will change our societies, be it trade shifts, changes in demographics, or the rise of artificial intelligence.
We are rethinking the way our industries and sectors should be running. We are reimagining, what the future will look like under a more sustained framework. I mean, these are big changes.
Understanding global trends can help all of us feel more empowered to tackle the challenges to come. That's where economics comes in. The World Economic Forum's chief economist community publishes their outlook 3 times per year, highlighting global economic trends and developments.
We have to make it more human, right? That this is the making a prosperous society and a sustainable society and increasing the size of the pie and making sure the distribution is just, however we want to define that. That's sort of the language we should be speaking.